Hi book lovers, and welcome back. Today I'm doing a wrap up not only for January but also for December. Like, thinking back on December, it feels like a lifetime ago, so I hope I didn't forget any of the books. December in general was a little bit of a haze. However, when we look at the statistics that I will have on the screen for you guys, my average rating was 3.89, which is like one of the best I think I've ever had. So overall I read 10 books in December, and I didn't read any fantasy books in December. And another great accomplishment for December is that I almost finished my entire TBR for the month, like the one that I chose with the TBR jar. And besides the Adult 6, I read the rest of them, which is great. The first one I have here is Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake. And wow guys, like this I think was the best Christmas romance I've ever read. It was so close to a 5-star. These characters were very messy and very faulty. Like, they felt so real. This is a second chance romance. And Brighton actually left Charlotte on the altar, and now there are a lot of hurt feelings and things that were unresolved. They're forced to spend Christmas together because they're both going home with their best friends who are siblings, but they didn't know that. And I just enjoyed this so much because the characters were so messy. They did mistakes, they had to take accountability, and I also understand if maybe not everyone would love this, but this was my kind of perfect Christmas romance. The next up I have here All In and Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and these are the last two books in the Natural series, and I feel like I've talked so much about this series. This series is incredible. I ate this up. This is a 5-star series. This is so good. It is crazy where the story began from the first book to where we end up here, and it is just so engaging and I love this. I think the only thing that I would have loved a little bit more is to actually get more of the feel of found family and also a little bit more romance, but that is just me. This is why a like Mr. Thriller series. Follow our main character who gets recruited by the FBI, and there are other 4 kids who've also been recruited by the FBI because of their special skills, and they all vary the skills of like being a lie detector or being able to read emotions or being very good with numbers and having like photographic memory, and they all go together on this journey and have to solve cold cases for the FBI, but then they also get involved in other things, and it's just so incredible good. Next up I have The Takedown by Charlie Walker, and this is also a Christmas book even though it doesn't look like it. And I kind of like the premise of this because she's an FBI not FBI, CIA undercover agent, I think, and her sister is marrying like a huge criminal, so she's going undercover, and the way to do it is to seduce the best man of the criminal. So I really enjoyed the plot, and I would say that this is very plot heavy, and this was fun. Like, I would give this 3 stars. It's a bit different. I personally would have wanted a lot more development between the 2 characters, but I also don't mind, since this is a very like plot-driven story, that we're there for, you know, the action, and this kind of felt like a rom-com action movie in a book. Another Christmas romance I have here is Kiss Her Once For Me by Alison Cotron, if I say that correctly, and this had also quite interesting plot because we have our 2 main characters who had like a one-night stand, then never see each other again, and now our main character, what is her name? Ellie, I think, kind of needs money, and this guy offers her, hey, if you fake date and fake marry me, I'm gonna get a lot of inheritance and I can give you the money you need. The only thing is you have to come with me for Christmas, so, you know, my family knows you and sees that this relationship is legit. So they fake date, but when she's home with her fake fiance for Christmas, she sees that his sister is actually the one-night stand she couldn't stop thinking about from a year ago. So a very messy plot, and I like messy plots. However, this I kind of expected a bit more. I just didn't love it as much as I thought. I would still say this is okay, especially for like a Christmas romance. I kind of forgot actually that I read this. Then I also read a thriller, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I have heard so many good things about this author and this book in particular. This was so fast-paced and easy to read. Our couple is going away for kind of reconnect, you know, their marriage doesn't feel as fresh anymore, and once they arrive a lot of things seem weird, and you do get multiple POV in here, and whenever you are in a POV you kind of question that person or you question the other person and you just don't know who to trust, but in the best way. And I enjoyed this so much because you were kind of able to guess what really is unfolding here with the characters. The plot twist still got me though, but it was also not like too complicated or too messy where I'm just lost with the story. Like, I don't really like that in a thriller when it tries like too hard with the twists and turns. Like, this was just very enjoyable. I read this in one sitting. Like, this I think would also be a great book if you kind of feel slumpy. I would definitely suggest picking this one up. Then I have one more Christmas book here, and that is From Paris with Love This Christmas. I hate this title. I hate this cover. Like, I think it is super ugly. And also this title is super misleading because, if I'm very honest, right now I'm even confused if it's probably around Christmas, but it's definitely not a book you like need to read for Christmas. And also it doesn't play in Paris. Like, yes, they go once to Paris and the main character is from Paris, but it plays in England. And I definitely thought I wouldn't like this book because of the cover and the title, and I don't know, it just didn't give me vibes that I would like it. I was wrong though. Our main character, Sienna, is such a socialite. She's from Paris. She definitely grew up very protected. She comes off a little bit spoiled, and now she's actually on the run of her not so nice fiance. And the guy she meets instead of her sister, who she actually like flees to, is Jason. And Jason doesn't really want anyone disturbing his peace, and he is not a huge fan of her at the beginning. However, these two, it's definitely giving like Grumpy Sunshine and opposites attract, and it kind of is a little bit like damsel in distress and the hero saving the girl. However, it also has a lot of like self-growth, and Sienna definitely has to do her own stuff. I'm just the biggest fan of Sienna, and this kind of reminded me a little bit of It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. The only thing that I want to say about this, and why I also didn't rate it higher, even though I enjoyed this a lot, that there's a lot of like mention, and it's part of the plot, domestic violence, and I would say like violence against women in general. And I feel like it kind of was braced over at some points. I wished it would have gotten a bit deeper, especially with topics like that. But overall, I really enjoyed this. Then I also read Flow by Kennedy Ryan, and this was my first Kennedy Ryan book, and it's the prequel to the Grip trilogy. And since this is just the prequel and a novella, I haven't really rated it, and I feel like there's not much to tell. Like, this is sort of the meet cute and why the couple in the main book, I haven't read that one yet, but like has history. It was good, it was definitely enjoyable, and I want to continue with the series. I did think that some of the things the characters said or thought were a bit cringe. Let's just say that there's a lot of room for the characters to grow, and I hope that they will grow, especially our main character girl. Some of the things she thought about other girls and women, I'm very over stuff like that in books, and especially when a guy has to explain to the girl that she's being misogynistic. I don't know. I'm not a fan. However, I don't really want to judge this without reading the whole series, but these were my like initial thoughts. Then I also finished Pilgrim, and I actually have like the book somewhere here, but I listened to the audiobook, and I'm not gonna keep the book. I'm actually gonna donate it because I'm not a fan of Pilgrim, and I would say it's probably a well-written book, and there is probably a lot of research that went into making and writing the book, at least from what I remember and what I actually got, because mainly I thought this was boring. It's about a special agent who I think is retired, but for some reason has to like go into the field because there's like a huge terror attack about to happen that only he can solve, or he has ties to. I don't really remember. And we're following his mission, and he's just very amazing. That's, you know, really everything we know about him, and it is crazy. This book is so thick how we literally don't know anything else. Like, he felt so one-dimensional. You can definitely give us more about a character than just use him as like the plot device, especially if he's our narrator and main character. So I didn't love that. There was so much explanation about where we are, or like the political situations, that I just didn't care. And also I didn't love how that was portrayed. It was very black and white and very much America's amazing and great, and literally everything else is not. Like, any other city, country, culture that was mentioned that wasn't American was kind of talked badly about, and it just made me feel so uncomfortable. I didn't really enjoy it. I'm just very glad that I was able to tick that one off and now get rid of from my personal library. However, the last book I read in December was one of the best from the whole year, and that was Beartown by Fredrik Backman. Wow, this was my first Fredrik Backman book, but by no means the last. I want to read everything now, even though it really brings me out of my comfort zone. I had to take breaks from the book. It touched me so deeply. It really amazes me how he told the story within this town. Like, you have a little hockey town in the middle of nowhere, I think in Sweden, and you follow all the different characters, and something happens in this town. The incident that happens really affects every single person in this small town, and it is about hockey, but it is about so much more. Like, it really shows how society works, how nuanced people are, how an issue has so many layers, and it is not just black and white. Like, I think that's what I loved about this book the most, and it was so incredible. It touched me so deeply. I feel like maybe this is also why I got a little bit into a slump, because I just didn't know what to read after this. Like, this was so incredible and very different from my other 5-star reads, because it also made me uncomfortable in the sense that this wasn't all like nice and happy. I cried almost the entire book, and it's a book I think everyone should read. So with that, let's say goodbye to December and let's talk about the books that I read this year so far. I read 8 books in January. I listened to one of those, and my average rating wasn't that high. As I said, I kind of felt a bit slumpy, so I don't know if I gave all of those books the best chance. I'm in a huge fantasy mood, so I've read 5 fantasy out of the 8 books, and from my TBR, I didn't really read a lot. I did start Pardon My French, and honestly, I don't know if this might be a soft DNF, because I've started it and I don't really vibe with the book. I feel like it's a bit too cheesy and too sweet for me. I do find it always hard to like DNF a book that I have, and I feel like I'm not ready for it, so it's a soft DNF for now. Let's start with the first book that I read this year, and that is Phantasma. There was a lot of talk about Phantasma at the end of last year, and since this is like a dark romantasy, I was definitely interested and wanted to see what I like, especially since you can read it as a standalone. There is another book, but that is interconnected, so you follow different characters from this world. So we're following 2 sisters, and I feel like I forgot almost all the names already, but they both owe a lot of money to the bank. So one of the sisters wants to participate in Phantasma. And Phantasma is like kind of this haunted house that goes from city to city, where you can enter the trials of Phantasma, who are run by devils. And if you win, you get a favor from the devil. So when our main character finds out that her sister entered, she's like, oh no, I can't let her go alone. So she enters as well. And once she's there, she's not allowed to see her sister until like round 6 or something. So she has to survive until then to see her sister. And she encounters this, oh my god, what is he again? Not like a ghost, but like a phantom. And she encounters this phantom within Phantasma, who wants to make a deal to try and help her win. And in return, she has to help him get him out. And there's also some attraction between those 2. And I, as I said, really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the setting. I think it was super fun. The only thing why I didn't rate it higher is that I feel like it was a bit too simple at some points when it comes to the plot or like the characters, especially since our main character like enters to find her sister, and those trials are deadly. She has the phantom to help her with, and she is a very like strong character. She has her own magic, but her sister doesn't. And I felt like once she was told that she can't see her sister until like round 6, she kind of forgot about her sister, or like it wasn't really mentioned. Like the whole sister thing kind of felt like a device for her to enter Phantasma as well, without being the one who like wanted it from the beginning, if that makes sense. I feel like as a romantasy it was very good, but it wasn't like super intricate when it came to the story, and also the ending. I felt like it was a bit too quickly wrapped up, and yeah, I would have wanted just a little bit more. Then I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams, and I've read No Exit by the author before, which is one of my favorite thrillers ever. Like, that was a 5-star thriller, so I was super excited for The Last Word, and it was very good. I felt like it was a bit more slow, and I wasn't as much on the edge as I was with No Exit. However, it was still super entertaining. It was just not creepy enough. I felt like the villain wasn't as scary. The plot, however, I thought was very scary, because you have this lonely woman who's like house sitting kind of in the middle of nowhere. She writes a bad review on a book, and the author doesn't like that and starts to stalk her. The next book I read is The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent, and this is the 3rd book of the Crowns of Nyaxia. I don't know how you would say this name. Let me focus this series. And I don't know if you could actually also start with this book, since this is the third one overall, but it follows different characters that were introduced in the first two books, and the first two books are like one duet, and this would definitely spoil a lot of the things that happened in the other two books. However, if you're really not interested in the other two books, I think you could also read this and be fine, because this feels different in the best way. Like, I love that with this book we had a whole new setting. This felt fresh and new, since the other duet like felt super complete and I didn't really need a lot more out of those characters and what happened with that storyline. So I like that we started a whole new journey, a whole new storyline with these characters, and I really like the romantasy part as well. Especially, guys, if you want slow burn, this was slow burn. I feel like Caressa Broadwin really gives romantasy in the best way, that it's like 50-50 romance and fantasy plot. However, this one felt more towards the fantasy plot line, and I feel like that the romance was a little bit less, but because it was slow burn and there was so much tension, I still really enjoyed the journey there. And I did see a lot of other reviews who weren't as positive, and I don't know really why. I felt like this really made sense for the characters. I sometimes feel like I'm not the best judge to review fantasy books, so maybe this plot wasn't too crazy for others. I don't really know. I think it was very good, and this was such a great build-up for the second book that I can't wait to get to. You have vampires, and what I also love, like, within this world you have the gods and everything, and I think that this world is very interesting, and I would actually love a book about like the gods. Amisha is turned vampire, so she was human, but another vampire prince turned her, and because of that she lost everything she cared about. And at the very end of the last books she did something where in this book she had to flee and got imprisoned, but someone saves her, but not just because he's a good guy, but he actually needs her for his own mission. And that's all I'm gonna say for this. Okay guys, so I just got a call that I had to take, and then my camera battery died, so it's been a little while and maybe this angle is a little bit different, but let's continue with the rest of the books that I read in January. And the next ones I have here are the Shepherd King duology. So the first one is One Dark Window and then Two Twisted Crowns, and I was so excited for this duology because all I really knew is that this is gothic fantasy and the magic system is very unique. And now that I've read them, I can confirm that that is very true. In this world, you have like special cards where you get magic from, and there's also like a disease going on. And if you survive the illness, then you might end up having magical power yourself without like using a card. However, those people who get sick are hunted down by the kingdom because they don't want that and they think that's very dangerous. And our main character Elspeth had the sickness and was able to hide like her power until she encounters a very mysterious highwayman who has his own secrets. I enjoyed this duology so much. It took me a while to get into actually both books. Like, I feel like they kind of started a bit more slowly, especially this one. Maybe it was also because I felt a bit slumpy. However, once I was in the story, this was so good, so enjoyable. But because of the like slower pace at the beginning, I gave this, I think, 3.75 stars. I also really enjoyed the little romance that we had in here. And in the second book, I loved that we got new POVs in here. I think they made the story so much more intricate. I don't know if it's just me, and I know that I cry easily at the books, but I was so choked up by the ending. Like, I shed some tears, guys. The duology together is for me a 4-star series and very, very enjoyable, and I highly recommend this. Then the only romance I read in January is Beckborough and Steel by Sarah Adams. This was also a highly anticipated release. I didn't think I would ever say that about Sarah Adams, but I love this When in Rome series in particular by her. I think this is so like cozy and sweet, but it also does have depth within the characters. In this one you have like nemesis who've known each other a very long time, I think throughout college, and they weren't always really nice to each other. However, both of them are really in a dud with their lives right now, and they end up being neighbors, but it seems that they can both help each other out and kind of get out of their life slump or the things they're dealing with, that they can help each other. And I just really enjoyed this. The whole small town this series plays in is inspired by Gilmore Girls, and I do really enjoy that. But as I said in the beginning, I feel like that it still has emotional depth to the characters where it's not silly and sweet. And I also think that Emily is a character that is a bit more unlikable, and I do like characters like that. And I actually really didn't like her in the first book, and I think that Sarah Adams stayed very true to her character, but at the same time also made us care for her and understand her, and yeah, just overall really enjoyed this new release by her. The next book I have here I listened to, I probably started the audiobook back in November, and that is A Game of Retribution by Scarlett St. Clair, which is part of the Hades and Persephone retelling. You have the one series with 4 books out of Persephone's POV, and you can read it entirely on its own, but you can also add the other series out of Hades' POV, which you would read in between these other 4 books. So this series has also 4 books. And I'm honestly just like reading or listening to these books for you guys to see if it's necessary. I enjoyed the first one, kind of understood that there are other plot lines that are getting introduced that we don't have in Persephone's POV. However, the second book out of Hades' POV kind of almost made me want to quit the entire series. This was so bad. They have such an awful relationship, and like, they just don't learn. They make the same mistakes over and over again, and I'm just like, I'm not rooting for them anymore. Especially Persephone, I feel like, was so hard to read out of Hades' POV, and it was almost like, why do you love her? Like, why are you still wanting to be with her? And I know this sounds harsh, but I just don't understand why we have this second series. And why not combine both POVs in one book? Because the other like plot lines that Hades is involved in, like, you could just add that with his POV. I think it is so unnecessary to have every single steamy scene out of Hades' POV as well. It's like a director's choice, what you want your audience to see. And I don't think that just giving them everything, to not edit that, feels a bit lazy, if that makes sense. Like, I want the story to feel intentional, and it is intentional what you show out of whose perspective. And I will take a breather moment before I continue with Persephone's book. That brings me to my last book in January, and that is my non-fiction book, which is Rewilding Africa by Grant Folds and Graham Space. I wouldn't really call this like a memoir. It's just a period of years, I think overall maybe like 4 years, something like that, where he kind of talks about his projects. So Grant Folds is a conservationist in Africa. He's from South Africa. This just was so interesting, and I think also the storytelling part was very, very good. Like, this is very well written and structured, and I think if you're like interested in wildlife and what heroes we have that help those animals, and to see more of like an insight in that, then this would be super interesting. I highly recommend this book. I wanted to read more non-fiction, and I'm glad that I already read one in the first month. So I feel like this is gonna be a longer video. I've been here for quite a while since I wrapped up 2 months in this video. I hope you enjoyed this. Definitely give this a like. Also let me know what your highlights were, and yeah, also subscribe for more bookish content, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!